Hello, and welcome to the Reasonable Music Review, the show where I review music without looking at any opinions on the internet to avoid echo chambering and performative opinions. Let's get started. Man's best friend. More like, dog, I wish I had one of those. As well. Today we're peeking into Sabrina's career at a very interesting time, at a time where her album debuts at the tippity top of the top 50 USA on Spotify, only to be immediately usurped by K-pop Demon Hunter, which leaves many, primarily me, but I'm sure other people too, to wonder what in the world is so damn popular about K-pop Demon Hunter. Like, seriously, this came out at the end of June, and like the entire soundtrack is still just lingering at the top of the top 50. That's insane. But aside from K-pop Demon Hunter, we are genuinely peeking into Sabrina's career at a very interesting point in time. I made a short about this somewhat recently, but something I've always found really interesting in music are the albums that artists release in an effort to follow up smashingly successful albums, sometimes even debut albums, because it's like this impossible task of capturing lightning in a bottle again, and not only capturing it, but trying to make it even more electric than it was the first time around. Sometimes this goes very, very well for artists. Sometimes it's kind of like meh, and they kind of get it, and then in a very specific instance, it absolutely tanks the career of the artist and sets up a comeback album 6 years later. And Man's Best Friend is that follow-up album for Sabrina, because last year she released Short and Sweet, which was a staple of 2024 and made the summer of 2024 one of the biggest pop revivals and pop renaissances in a really long time. As an endless amount of people have covered, it was really her, Charlie XCX, and Chappell Roan that made pop exciting again for that summer and gave us so much good music over the course of just, a couple months. So Sabrina has given us her bottle. Will there be lightning in it? Will there not? In an effort to find that out, I'm going to tell you the things that I liked. I'm going to tell you the things that I disliked, and then kind of just wrap it all up at the end. I don't know. So just like Short and Sweet, I see the biggest strength of this album and the biggest strength of Sabrina and the biggest tool in her toolkit being her playfulness and her ability to write really effective satirical lyrics and funny lyrics and lyrics that use modern concepts. So there are a lot of lines in this album that are hilarious and memorable, and a lot of people are going to point out, and I'll put a couple of those on the screen. But what I really want to talk about in this regard is just the tiny little details that add to that playfulness and make her music so engaging. Like, it's the little things, like on Man-Child when they're saying amen and then she ends it with hey man, and also the part on Tears where she goes dance break, like the over-the-top whip sound effect towards the end of Nobody's Son. I could go on. There are countless examples of this, but it's all these little things that make her music so enjoyable and so engaging. And another thing that I think helps her music be so engaging is her use of modern language. And I know that sounds like a weird thing to point out, but I was kind of talking about this in the video that I made about Jesse Wells last week, where I feel like a lot of songwriters and pop singers try to like use the language that they think a songwriter should sing in, as opposed to just the words that they would naturally be inclined to write in. Like, instead of just writing how they talk or writing how they think, they're trying to write how they think they should think and how they think they should write. But I love that Sabrina does not do that. She sings exactly how people in modern day American culture talk, and there's a couple examples of this that I'll put on the screen, and I think it's wonderful. So another thing that really makes this album for me, and it's just another one of Sabrina's greatest strengths in general, is her ability to write about, like, honestly really mundane but very relatable things, but in a very original way, to where like the concepts that she's singing about may not necessarily be original, but the way that she's approaching it absolutely is. And I think the best example of that is My Man on His Willpower. Like, we have pop songs about people drifting away, we have pop songs about people growing apart, but we don't really have pop songs about the emotion of your person just being really focused on something that they want to do, or focused on a goal, and them kind of maybe prioritizing you a little bit less. Like, that's so specific, and I've never heard a pop song about that. And I appreciate that originality. It's really refreshing for this really mainstream, glamorous pop song to be talking about that very specific concept. Another example of this, and honestly maybe even a better example, is Sugar Talking. Like, we definitely have songs about boyfriends lying or not living up to their word and so forth and so on. Like, that itself is not necessarily original, but the way that she approaches it totally is, and it's really fascinating to me, because she turns this very antagonistic, critical song about a relationship kind of fading into this very like seductive, smooth song. Like, it's really fascinating. And she does that so effectively to the point where, I'm not even gonna lie, the first two times I listened to this song, the point completely flew over my head. I just assumed it was like a love song, like an alluring love song. But then I read through the lyrics and I was like, shoot, it's actually the opposite of that. This is not that at all. And she spins the word sugar talking to talk about something a little bit more negative. And I think that's genius. And the same could be said about Never Getting Laid and even House Tour, with the former being really fascinating because it is a very stark criticism of this other person, but I think it's really more of a reflection of herself, like a satirical criticism of herself for how obsessive and how cruel she's being and wishing all of this on this person. And this is a writing technique that she uses a lot. She uses it on Taste. She uses it on My Man and His Willpower. She uses it on Don't Worry, I'll Make You Worry, and even Please, Please, Please to a degree. And I personally just find that technique really fascinating and really clever, and I like that she keeps using it and developing it. So another huge strength of the album is all the various like instrumental breakdowns or crescendos at the end or towards the middle of a lot of songs. Like this is something that she didn't really do on Short and Sweet, and a lot of pop artists don't tend to do. But I think works super well on this album. Like the most obvious and kind of on the nose example of this is towards the end of Go-Go Juice with that very random violin solo and the da 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 da. I could see some people being kind of annoyed by that part, but I personally love it because it's such a stark contrast from the beginning of the song, and it really makes that song feel like a journey up to the end. I love it, and I also like how the chorus kind of calms down for a second at the end, and then they pick it up for one last, final get up or whatever. Just as a very small, completely irrelevant side note, I see this song, and I keep categorizing this song as a much more palatable and less terrible version of a bar song by Shaboozey. No hate if you like that song. I'm not trying to be like toxic or anything. If you like that song, keep enjoying it. But I'll leave it at that. I see this song as a much better alternative to that one. But going back to the instrumental thing, she pretty much does that on every single song on the album, and I think it works really well. Like with at the end of Tears doing the dance break part, and towards the end of My Man on His Willpower with the 20-foot pole line and the That Boy Is Corrupt part and Nobody's Son, and then also the really nice unexpected beat switch towards the end of Never Getting Laid, which was really nice. And then even on the closing track Goodbye, we get this really nice ABBA inspired crescendo towards the end, where just all of the instrumentals go silent and it's just her vocals. Like I felt like I was watching Mamma Mia when I listened to that part. But I thought that was a great closer to the album. And I think it was a really smart choice to really hone into the instrumental crescendos and breakdowns, because it just makes every single song on the album, even some of the ones that are not so great and are a little slower, feel very grand and very expressive. And so to kind of start getting into my negatives a little bit, I don't really have anything particular. Like I don't have a particular song that I hate, with maybe the exception of Don't Worry, I'll Make You Worry. But really that song's greatest offense is just being like a little uninteresting and kind of maybe falling a little flat on the wordplay. But even that, it's still a good song. But I do have maybe a criticism on a slightly broader, more conceptual level. So something that I fear for the future of Sabrina's career is her potentially being pigeonholed and kind of like typecast into just this genre of music that she's kind of created for herself. Because something that she's incredibly good at, and I think is exactly what made Short and Sweet so popular, are these very clever innuendos and these break the fourth wall moments. And I will stress that it's not that I'm personally offended by these, or that like I don't think she should be singing about these. I think she's great at it. I think the songs are hilarious. I think she does a really good job. But my point is, from an artistic perspective, I want to see artists grow. I want to see them push themselves. I want to see them try new things. And I'm worried that the popularity of these innuendo lyrics will maybe pigeonhole her into something that she can't get out of, instead of just pushing herself. So going into this record, I was worried that we were just going to see like a bunch of rehashing of those same techniques, but on maybe like a less impressive scale. But fortunately, I think it was actually the other way around, where she kept a lot of those same techniques, but I think she actively improved on all of them. I personally find this album a lot funnier and a lot more clever and a lot more like lyrically complex than Short and Sweet. I very much prefer this record. But I would be kind of disappointed if we flashed forward 10 years and then we look back and we saw that the past 5 Sabrina Carpenter albums or something were just like the same, heavily innuendoed, suggestive, playful, hilarious, in-your-face lyrics, which once again she's great at. But I do see her as somebody who has a lot of songwriting potential and a lot of range potentially, so I would hate to see her just pigeonhole herself into that same trope on every single album or every single deluxe. So I think she's doing great, but I just hope she can kind of break out of that as albums move forward. So another criticism I have of this album, which I am admittedly a little nervous to share, is the potential impact of her lyricism. First off, I totally understand that all of her music is satirical and it's hilarious, and a lot of it's self-deprecating, and even at times where she might be criticizing men or making fun of men, she's not trying to systematically destroy men or do these crazy things. I'm not arguing any of that. I don't think Sabrina's doing anything wrong, but nevertheless, I do sometimes wonder about the cultural impact impact that lyrics like this might have on people's behaviors and their relationships and their behaviors towards their partners. Like, I recognize the humor in these lines and the humor in a lot of lines like it, especially this one. It made me laugh out loud as I was listening through it. So I totally understand that these are jokes, but nevertheless, jokes do sometimes have an impact, which she acknowledges on Don't Worry, I'll Make You Worry, especially when it is a huge celebrity sharing those jokes. So to be specific, what I'm worried about is that these satirically toxic lyrics will influence others to be actually toxic in their relationships or towards their partners. Like, could these lyrics maybe start to plant the seed in someone's mind of them constantly wanting that obsession from their partner and constantly like not wanting that partner to do anything else but pay attention to them? Maybe not. Maybe it's not that deep. I totally acknowledge that these lyrics may not even have anywhere close to that impact or never will, but to be completely honest, it's just something that I think about every once in a while. To kind of finish off, overall, song for song, I totally prefer this album to Short and Sweet all day. There may not be the huge standout singles like Espresso and Please, Please, Please that Short and Sweet had going for it, but like I said, song for song, the entire album is just consistently enjoyable and engaging and skillful and just catchy on some level or another. And preparing for this review, I listened to this album probably like 5 or 6 times straight through, and it was enjoyable every single time, which, to be honest with you, is not something that I could say for a lot of albums that I've listened to even once. And there were even songs that, after listening to the album 5 or 6 times, made me want to go back and listen to them individually and listen to them casually in my free time. So like I really respect that album was able to kind of pull that engagement out of me. It was fun. So as to whether or not I think Sabrina captured lightning in the bottle again, I would say yes. Personally, like I said, I mean, I haven't looked at any of the internet's opinions yet or what other people are thinking, but I personally think this is a huge improvement on Short and Sweet. And I'm happy to see it. You know, who's to say whether or not this album will have the same cultural impact that Short and Sweet did, but nevertheless, I see it as a huge improvement towards Sabrina's artistic ability, and it seems very inspired, and like she's still enjoying her music and pouring her passion into it, which is just always so fun to see in an artist. But the only obstacle to her passion is the aforementioned K-pop demon hunter. Sabrina, good luck as you try to run from the passionate longings of the K-pop demon hunters. I wish you well.